2,000 people on it. I didn't find out about it until 3 o'clock. It was supposed to be in at 2. So just talking about city and the way that they communicate. I actually had phoned the person who wrote the press release, and she said, oh, okay, I thought one of my people were going to tweet about it. But it was, just one more example of what you're talking about, the lack of communication. And I think this is not why I don't go up. This is good to talk about communication. But my complaint with communication is that it's almost like it's intended to not be read. It's sent out all of the information, the notices, the stuff that's in the newspaper every week. It's so dense, it is so not user-friendly, that I am sure that if you poll even this room here, which is a room full of, I would assume, because we're all here concerned citizens, that the vast majority of us do not go further than the first 3 or 4 words most of the time, unless it's something that's very relevant to us and we're looking for it. So just how the city communicates with the citizens is so poor, it is beyond poor, it's pathetic. And again, I think it's intended to dissuade people from actually participating. If you don't get people reading the information, and so you put out a notice and you say, this is what's happening, and then you say, well, nobody responded, so we're not going to have a public meeting because nobody responded. Well, you got what you wish for by putting out that information in the first place. Anyway, that's not what I wanted to ask a question about. My name is, and I won't go on much longer, my name is Peg Norman. I live in Ward 2. I own a building in Ward 2, a large commercial building on Water Street, and I run a business in another building as a tenant. I own rental properties in Ward 2 as well. And I guess because I don't really know yet where I'm going to put my vote for my ward councilor, I guess what I want to get from the 3 of you is a better sense of where you sit with regards to the ward itself, the downtown, how you see the next 10, 15, 20 years developing for the downtown core. Do you think that having more Class A office space in the downtown is a good idea? Do you think that putting in more large parking lots is a good idea? If you don't think either of those are a good idea, why not? It's a bit of a long question, but I guess I need to get a sense of if we're on the same page here when it comes to the downtown development. Running a business in the downtown, I see more business, more of those big offices being built. There's just more headlights in and taillights out, because they don't bring prosperity to the businesses in the downtown core. They just bring more traffic. So just get some idea where you sit in those things.
Excellent question. And something that I've spoken to a lot of people on the doorsteps about is downtown development. And I am completely pro-development. It goes back to that statement I made earlier about do what you need to do so that you can do what you want to do. And we need to develop, and we need to, in my mind, preserve that heritage core. As far as Class A office space, I'm sure there's a need for some Class A office space downtown. I don't know that, I'm sure every company who might like to build an office building would love to have it downtown. But I don't see why every big glass tower needs to be built downtown. There's lots of examples of buildings that were built up away from the downtown that have been very successful. The Hydro building, for one. I'm sure if the people who were building the Hydro building had their pick, they would have loved to have it downtown. But, that to me is not an appropriate development for the downtown core. Certain developments, I think, are appropriate. I think the west end of Water Street is an appropriate place for some development. Parking structures, I think we could use a little more parking. But I don't want to see the downtown full of new parking structures either, just because we have parking issues. That's not the only way to solve the problem. So I don't know if that totally answers your question, but I think we absolutely need to continue to develop the downtown, but not just at any cost. And there's too much to lose if we put the wrong thing in the wrong place. So we need to be very careful.
As far as the parking issue downtown, what I often like to try to put in perspective is that it's not a parking issue necessarily, it's a car issue. And we know why that's a car issue is because there's all these people, like I said, driving in, driving out every day. And then another thing that's going on right now, like for example, the 351 Water Street and the Henry Bell development on Duckworth Street there, is that we have parking growing going in, which is at ground level, which we know is terrible urban design, and it creates dead space where it should be kind of flourishing pedestrian places. It's dark, in some of them they look kind of okay as far as parking garages go, but I think that we definitely don't need that many more parking garages. I think that we need less cars, and so we have to do more to improve public transportation downtown. As far as kind of the other developments and such that are going on and how the city's going to grow, which you kind of spoke about, I think that the main thing I hear from people, the kind of which would be my own sentiment too, is that you kind of want to see development happen in the character and scale of what's around it. And so you don't want to see things that like, well, why is that building there? You know what I mean? That it's surrounded by a much smaller building. So as long as things kind of tend to blend in, fit in, then and it's probably okay. And I think that as far as density too, we obviously need density, but it has to be appropriate. And Ward 2 is already the densest ward anyways. We have a pretty good density as far as it goes. People are able to walk around and things like that too. But we just have to make sure that, like Scott touched on, is that we're doing it in spaces that make sense to do it, and that we don't need, as far as the Class A office space downtown, it doesn't all have to be downtown. Like you said, it doesn't really contribute anything. Right now, we have probably more than enough office space downtown. We need more people living downtown, businesses downtown, that people can not have to go up to Swinger Drive to get a hammer or whatever the case might be, right?
Thank you so much for your question. But first start off to say that downtown was built with small businesses since the city really has been around. And I think oftentimes when the city introduces new development, large-scale development, it can have an impact on small business and local business owners. And I think oftentimes the city really needs to evaluate what the priority here is, and that's to ensure that the existing businesses themselves do not feel as if they're being pushed out by big developers. I don't support increased parking garages downtown. The example I would use is the Quality Inn has a massive parking garage that is empty. I would suggest that next time you're in the area, take a little drive down there and look at the space within that structure that not very many people are aware about. And I think the city needs to open discussion with these businesses to let people know that there are other options. I don't think building parking garages is the way to go. We need to really evaluate the public transit system, and I think that's key. In terms of the office space downtown, oftentimes there is a need, but I think there are a lot of buildings that are underutilized. I think the city needs to do a better job in communicating with business owners to identify where space may be available. Once again, you build a new office tower, you're going to have an impact on those existing structures that may be struggling to find tenants.